Welcome to all the brothers and sisters from the Guardian Revival community. My name is Eddie, and I'm here with my co-host Monty, and we are hosting the American Guardian podcast presented by Guardian Revival. And if you want to learn more, you can always visit our website at guardianrevival.org. But before you go to the website, we're going to tell you now a little bit about Guardian Revival, the American Guardian podcast. And if you saw the last episode, you got a little info about what a guardian is. But Monty, why don't you give us a few highlights about what a guardian is?
Yeah, thanks, Eddie. Happy to be here. The short answer is a guardian is a first responder or a veteran. So somebody that joined the military or joined the police force, the fire department, EMS, and then left. And then the longer answer is it's a person of service, right? The American Guardian is a person of service. It's a person that, buys into and signs up for something larger than self. It's a person who runs towards the fire, unfortunately, towards the gunfire, and shows up on scene when an accident occurs or something really bad happens. So, yeah, the American Guardian is first responders and veterans.
Yeah. And the American Guardian is something that a lot of us can relate to because in the modern world, so much of our life and our way of life is based upon our freedoms. And our freedoms need to be protected, not only on a domestic level, but also on an international level. And there are people who believe very strongly and deeply in the conviction of what it means to have freedom. I personally find freedom is the highest value for me personally. And I'm grateful to live in a country where freedom is paramount insofar as being one of our values. But what that means is that in order for us to have our freedoms, they need to be protected. And there are a lot of good people. I grew up in a world where I was taught from a very young age that it was an honor and a privilege to dedicate your life to serving and helping other people. As a matter of fact, I'm a former New York City firefighter, and the idea of helping people for a living is just, for me, it felt like a real privilege and honor to even be in that position. But as we know, you were talking about running toward the fire, running toward gunfire. Some people do this overseas, serving in the U.S. military, and some people do it here on the domestic front, whether it's working in law enforcement or fire and rescue. And a lot of the times, the people that sign up for a life of service and dedication to protecting this way of life, they deal with an extraordinary amount of trauma, an extraordinary amount of stress. And sometimes they can get stuck in these places where they're overwhelmed with stress. And so we're creating this conversation to help support and facilitate the health and wellness of our veterans and first responders. We want to let our guardians know that we appreciate and we're grateful for their service and sacrifice. And so we want to talk about all things related to the health and well-being of our guardian community. So let's touch a little bit on some of the things that can keep us healthy and keep us performing well, not only in our professional lives, but also in our personal lives. So Monty, can you talk a little bit about physical fitness, our physical bodies being healthy, what it means to have a strong, healthy physical body, why we should do it, and how we can do it?
Yeah, well, earlier you mentioned freedom, and I think a physical body and good physical health is tied to freedom, or at least it is in my mind. So, for example, if you're not physically fit, your freedoms are kind of taken away, and you can, your mobility can be taken away. And so let's link it back to the positive. So I think there's nothing better than getting up in the morning and doing some type of a workout. Whatever you're into, I think it's a good thing. Keeping your heart rate low down in the zones 1, 2, and 3 are about 75% of your max heart rate, and we can get more into that later. But some type of workout on an empty stomach, I think, is amazing for humans, for the body, and then also for the mind. I think working out for me at least, even though it's a physical thing is, and we can talk about this more later, but it's a mental thing. I need that. I need it for my day. I feel like my day is complete once I get my workout in, or at least I've started the day off in the right way. And if you really want to go balls to the wall, you could do two a days. You could do some type of a like cardio in the morning and then some type of strength training at night. If you have the time, I know it requires a lot of time, but if not, you can get a great workout in 30 to 45 minutes. But yeah, physical fitness is important. It's important for the whole body. It's important for the mind, and it shouldn't be discounted. And if you're not doing well, just in life in general, I would ask you to look at your physical fitness, and I can almost guarantee if you're not doing well in life, your physical fitness has taken a hit, and for one reason or another, it's not on the top of your priority list. And I would suggest that it maybe creep its way back up there towards the top. What do you think, Eddie?
I love that you mentioned the connection and correlation between our physical well-being and our mental well-being. I I think where I made a mistake, like a few years ago, I was going through a really difficult time. I was injured at work, and so I retired from the fire department unexpectedly, which kind of put me in a position where I kind of suffering this crisis of meaning and purpose. Now, what do I do now that I'm not a firefighter anymore? My mom got sick. A friend of mine that I was a firefighter with got diagnosed with a terminal illness. And it was this kind of trifecta of a lot of challenges. And I remember being in a funk and a friend of mine telling me, you got to get out there in the woods, into nature, and get some fresh air and move your body. And as much as I had done my homework and knew what it was like to keep a physically strong and healthy body, I had just lost the motivation and the willpower. And what I came to realize during that time was that it wasn't that I had to sit around and wait for some magic shot of caffeine or to get some sort of willpower or motivation, that it was actually up to me to, no matter how tired, no matter how cold and wet and dark it was out, no matter how much I wasn't in the mood, that I needed to take action first. And then from the action, that's what started me building my health back. And what I noticed immediately, that as soon as I did the work and I put myself out there and got my heart rate up and got my blood flowing, that I thought back about how I felt before, and I was like, wow, I feel a lot better than I did previously. So if there's someone out there that's listening, that's maybe they're listening to this, they're hoping that there's some information that we pass back and forth. What can you talk about um, taking action first as opposed to waiting for motivation and willpower, but instead creating the momentum by going out there and doing the work first?
Yeah, great. I'm glad you asked me this. Taking the steps is more important than planning to take the steps, right? Or I'm going to start my program on Monday, or I'm going to start my eating well on Monday, or I'm going to start working out on Monday. No, just start today, right? Instead of starting one day, how about starting today and make it day one? So instead of one day, make it day one. And it's important just to get going, even if you might have heard this before: fake it till you make it. Even if you don't feel like going to the gym, even if you don't feel like eating right, even if you don't feel like getting off the couch and getting outside, you mentioned nature. I think it's super important to literally get outside and get sunlight into your eyeballs and get out into nature. Um, and if you don't have the motivation and you don't have the discipline, you just have to make yourself do it. It doesn't become automatic and it doesn't become habit until you make it a habit, right? So hopefully you find the motivation to get you moving, and your motivation keeps going until you have your discipline in place. And then once you have your discipline in place, you don't need motivation anymore. You're going to do it whether you like it or not, whether you feel like it or not. That's because that's what discipline is doing what you need to do, whether you feel like doing it or not.
I love that. I love that because there's this idea. we live in a world where we have so many creature comforts. We have the snacks we want and the shows we want and the most comfortable bed and all the things we could watch and want. And we can scroll endlessly and we can access this cheap dopamine. We can watch, X-rated things that are not good for our brains and bodies. We can pour poison down our throat. We can, we can be addicted to virtually anything. And I noticed that there was a time in my life where I thought, okay, I'll just build a life where I'll work towards being comfortable. And when I finally got there, I realized that I was the least happy I had ever been. So, can you talk a little bit about what it means to not only not be comfortable all the time, but to willingly and choicefully step out of your comfort zone, embrace the suck, and challenge our minds and bodies in a way where the very thing like not being comfortable is the very thing that gives us a deeper sense of satisfaction and well-being. Can you talk a little bit about why stepping out of the comfort zone is so important and challenging ourselves is so important to being healthy?
Yeah, man, good stuff. So we've all heard this: step out of the comfort zone. There's no growth in the comfort zone. Um, but it's true. It's real. And we have set up our lives to be more comfortable. All innovations and tech are supposedly making our lives more comfortable, although we just went through some tech issues, and good on you and good on us for not smashing anything, right? Um, but
Yes.
things are supposed to be more comfortable, and that's how all innovations nowadays are driven towards comfort, seeking comfort, making, less effort. It takes less and less effort. Heck, you don't even have to go to the grocery store anymore. With a couple finger presses, you can have groceries show up at your house, basically have everything show up at your house. You don't even need to leave your couch. But I'm not sure that in the long run, those are really good things. And uh, we do need to step out of our comfort zone to get any growth. So what the heck does that mean? That means when you're working out, it means that you're uncomfortable. It means that you're out of breath. It means that you couldn't read an encyclopedia to your friend. It means that you're huffing and puffing a little bit. This arduous demand we put on our bodies equals growth and equals strength. So, and that works physically and that works mentally, right? So, I think physically we all understand, you go to the gym, you lift heavier and heavier weights, and you just tax your body more and more, and your body just stays ahead of that curve. You just keep getting stronger and stronger and stronger, as long as you're eating the protein and you're getting the sleep. But that everybody kind of understands that with lifting weights, but we don't seem to understand that socially or emotionally, right? Or psychologically. But those things are important too. I'm sure you can get into this. We'll get into this shortly, but let's just say socially. If you have left your job, and you outlined a pretty good case earlier, Eddie, of someone that had just you just got hit with all sorts of things at the same time, and your health probably took a little dive because of it. Um, but if you were to put some time and effort into physical fitness at that time, it can start to drag you out. It can start to lay the foundation for other things to be layered on top. And I think it starts with physical fitness. And I know it went all over the place there, but did I answer your questions?
Absolutely. No, you made it much clearer to yeah, you also mentioned something about like how we dedicate our time on a daily basis to going out and like procuring food for ourselves. And it's this idea also that for thousands of years, I mean, hundreds of thousands of years, we essentially spent every day and our life energy, our life force, we would spend getting up in the morning, gathering together with the people that we care about in our tribe. And we would go out hunting and fishing or procuring materials to build shelter, or we would fight alongside of each other or harvest the crops. The women would take care of the children and nurse the infants and teach them or care for the sick and the elderly. And everything that we did was a means of service, whether it was in service to ourselves, our immediate family, or our overall tribe. And I think in a lot of ways, we've also lost that because now we go out and we spend the lion's share of our days, some of us sitting in cubicles working for corporations, and we're never really doing the work necessary to actually take care of the people that we care about, except to make money to provide for a lifestyle. So in the Guardian revival community, I feel like, and I'll speak to myself personally, When I was suffering from a sense of meaning, or a sense of purpose, and lacking direction, sense of purpose, I was started to feel bad for myself. I got caught up in a victim mentality, feeling bad for, feeling like robbed of my sense of purpose and meaning. And then I realized, nobody's coming to save you. And it's gonna be up to me to kind of, like you said before, pull myself out of it by just doing the work, not waiting until I was inspired to do the work, but just doing it. And I also found that by dedicating my time and energy to helping other people who are also struggling, it was a very natural way for me to feel purposeful and to create meaning in my life. And I think with this podcast, the American Guardian podcast, and Guardian Revival as an organization, it's really this recognition that our overall health and well-being has a lot to do with not only getting out there and doing stuff, but the type of stuff that we do to help each other. And so, can you talk a little bit about what it means to serve on a local level, on a more community level, and how we can get involved if we're feeling like we want to participate and find a deeper sense of meaning and purpose?
Yeah, man. So I wrote down three things while you were talking, and I want to hit all these: lacking purpose and meaning, the victimhood mentality, and then helping others. So first of all, helping others for me is like 10 years old, about 10 or 11 years old. My first introduction was Special Olympics as a ski instructor. And that really started my journey from wanting to hurt people to wanting to help people. And I can tell you that hurting people, like elbowing people in the face or choking them out or whatever, is sort of a black hole that doesn't get filled, and it's a void that doesn't get filled. But when you help somebody, it feels really good, and it's a different feeling, and it could be a new feeling. It was a new feeling for me, but it felt amazing, right? And when I was lacking purpose and meaning, my purpose and meaning was gained by helping other people. It wasn't being selfish; it was being selfless. So that's what I would suggest to you. If you're lacking purpose and meaning, you might want to try helping other people. Okay, victimhood mentality, right? This is huge, and we can all fall into it, even us tough guys and first responders and veterans and all that. When we experience trauma and then we pour alcohol on it or drugs or however we overeat or shop, whatever we do to numb that pain, which doesn't fix it, it just sort of glosses it over. When we do that, we can start to fall into this victim mentality and start to fall into ruminating and thinking about what we are going through, what we went through, how bad it was, how nobody can understand us, nobody else has been through this, blah blah blah, and all these things we tell ourselves, and you can quickly get into this victimhood mentality. But the way out is action steps in the right direction. It is starting a goal. It is trying to find some meaning and purpose, and you establish this goal, and then you start taking action steps towards that goal. No one's going to do it for you, just like you said. No one's coming to save us. Nothing external can really drag us humans out of a dark place. We need to. You can surround yourself with good people and inspiring people and motivational people, but really it does come from within. So I'm going to kick it back to you, Eddie. It's all about coming from within. It's got to
Yeah.
come from within.
If you want to learn more about how to stay connected to a community and how to improve your physical, emotional, spiritual, psychological well being, you can find out more by visiting guardianrevival.org, or you can email us at agpodcast@guardianrevival.org. And remember, you are never alone. Yeah, what stuck with me the most is this idea of these feelings. So I'll speak for myself here so I don't get too general. When I was feeling the victim mentality, when I was feeling like, why did this happen to me? When I was feeling overwhelmed, as if it almost seemed like everybody else was enjoying life and everything was perfect for them. And yet I was here now stuck in this place that I didn't want to be. And the thing that made my suffering worse was just what you said. I felt alone with it. And I think one of the primary reasons I felt alone with it was because this idea about, like, so being sad was something that I was never really I wasn't taught what sadness was. If I cried as a kid, being the youngest of five, I was told, "I'll give you something to cry about." Like it was a lot of tough love and this old school mentality. And then growing up and going through the sadness of, let's say, my mom getting sick or my buddy getting a terminal illness or dealing with the physical injuries from leaving work and not knowing really where I belong, I felt very alone with it. And the reason I felt alone with it because I really didn't know how to understand the emotions I was experiencing. So instead of me being able to say and process, "Oh, feeling sad because my mom is dying or my friend was diagnosed with a terminal illness," instead of being able to identify that and work through it, I just felt really alone with it. And I think feeling that isolation can just make anything that we're feeling feel much worse, which is one of the reasons specifically that we are starting this podcast is because if we can remind the brothers and sisters out there that are going through a tough time, that maybe we're injured from their service, that maybe you're feeling alone and feeling stuck in life, maybe they're dealing with depression and anxiety, maybe they're trying to numb and distract those tough feelings by pouring booze on it, by using substances, or by a host of unhealthy habits. When we realize that we're not alone with it and there's other people that are going through what we're going through, it can hurt a lot less. What I realized was that I was not alone with it, that what I was experiencing was quite common. And when I realized that, it definitely I felt a lot less alone with it. So, can you talk a little bit about what it means to create a community or connection and to for us, for me and you as men, to be able to have a conversation about health, physical, mental, emotional well being, and what that means about connecting with other people to learn about how we can be healthier.
Yeah, I think the first thing is we just need to normalize it, right? We need to normalize people's thoughts and behavior, and we often think that we're just like you said, you felt alone, you felt like the whole world was crumbling down and everybody else had a great life or whatever, and you were stuck with these, crappy circumstances, and that's how people often feel, and it's like an avalanche or an ambush for one thing after another, like everything you just mentioned, and then your hot water heater goes out or your transmission breaks in your car, you already can't afford your bills, and now you have more bills, and it just stacks up and stacks up and stacks up. So I think the first thing is to realize like a lot of people feel that way. A lot of people feel overwhelmed. A lot of people feel like they're not getting ahead. They're swimming in more debt. Their health is getting worse. They're adding pounds, not subtracting pounds. So I guess the first thing is to normalize it. And even though we see other people's like Instagram and social media posts and they look all amazing, right? Just know that that's that's sort of like highlight reels, right? Social media is sort of like highlight reels of people's lives, and they might not be as happy or content or full of joy as they seem. So I guess what I'm saying is if you're not doing well and you're not feeling well, you're probably more of the norm than the exception, and that's how I would start this community and connection conversation with anybody, is that how you're feeling is probably quite normal. Those negative thoughts, that cynicism you might have, I think that's all normal and understandable. But how do we go from here? You can wallow in your misery, or you can take steps in a direction of your choosing.
Beautiful. I love it. I love the idea of taking the next best step, of understanding that at every moment of our day, every moment of our life, we do have the opportunity to make a choice. And sometimes it's not the easy choice, but it's the healthier choice to step out of the comfort zone and do the work necessary to be healthier. And so, Monty, you and Kenny, who's also a team guy from the Navy SEALs, you run a program called Wellness Wednesdays. And essentially, Wellness Wednesdays is all about things related to health and wellness, not only physical, but mental, the connection, the community. What else can we talk about in reference to, like, if you had to talk about the top things, if you could encourage someone that was stuck and they weren't sure what the next best step could be for them, what would you encourage would be another next best step that someone could look at or
Yeah.
consider to make that
Yeah,
choice?
basically look at the 4 pillars, right? These 4 pillars are, what we talk about all the time, and that's basically output, input, mindfulness, and sleep, right? So the output is kind of what I was touching on earlier, the working out, burning calories with your body, moving your body, in some form or fashion, right? That's pretty cut and dry. The output, the more we move, the better we are. Use it or lose it type thing as we age, for sure. I think everybody understands the output. The intake is everything we're putting in our bodies, right? From things that we drink, the things that we eat. What I'd say there is sugar is very bad, and as amazing as it tastes, it's not our friend. And they're starting to call like Alzheimer's, dementia, like type 3 diabetes, because basically we're becoming resistant. We're becoming insulin resistant, due to the amount of sugar that we eat all the time as Americans, as humans. So chill on sugar is what I would say on the intake. Mindfulness, you've got to do something. You've got to do some type of mindfulness during the day, and it could be anything from a breathing exercise, a guided meditation, reading a non-political or agitating book, writing something, anything, writing anything non-political, reading anything non-political. And I keep saying political because we can consume too much politics, and it's not helpful. Um, so that's the mindfulness piece, is taking some time to just slow the mind down, slow yourself down, focus on something, say breathing or the sounds that you hear versus the 50 million other things that you have going on in your life. And then sleep hygiene. Sleep hygiene is really important. If humans don't sleep well, we run amok, from cancer to inflammation to psychosis. Like, we need sleep for sure. And what I would say on that is get blue light in the morning, 50 minutes before 11 a.m., and chill on the blue light at night, specifically screens, TVs, iPhones, iPads, all these devices at night that emit blue light. It's not good. Cut that out 2 hours before bedtime if you can. Cut it out at least an hour before bed. But I know a lot of us, myself included, are looking at our screens until the second we intend to go to bed, and it's not good. It messes with our algorithms, our sleep cycles, and they say, even though you like, if you were to look at your watch or sleep recording device, even if you are asleep, if you have that blue light up to the moment you go to bed, it can trash 2 hours of it. So it's actually 2 of those hours are not deep sleep. It's not where all the healing occurs. It's not where you become rejuvenated. So, with sleep, if you're waking up in the morning and feeling more groggy and tired than when you went to bed, you probably didn't get enough sleep, and you need to look at your sleep hygiene. So yeah, those are the four pillars, man. And some of these things, like the physical aspect, it sounds superficial and it sounds ridiculous. Like, wait a minute, you're telling somebody that's down in the dumps and, like they've hit their low point, that they need to work out? Yeah, actually, you do. Yes, the answer to that is a huge yes, because everything will stem from that. Everything stair steps up from that physical well-being, well-being.
I absolutely agree. And it actually brings to mind, and I am not like someone that, I mean, I was an altar boy when I was a kid. I don't go to church much anymore, except, if it's for a special occasion. But the serenity prayer always stuck with me. And because it's not really dogmatic in the traditional sense, it's this idea of, God. And if you don't like the word God, you can use creation or universe. Grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things that I can. And the key part that I have problems with all the time is the wisdom to know the difference. And the reason that I bring that up is because I struggle with the wisdom to know the difference. It's this idea of like this internal locus of control or an external locus of control. And it's like this idea of like, let's make a list of all the things we have control over and all the things we don't have control over. And number one on the list of things we do not have control over is other people. We don't control other people. And you said before, politics. Put that number two on the list, politics, which we're in an election year. We have no control of what other people do, external circumstances, the political world. We have no control over that. So essentially, by allowing our health and well-being to be determined by whether or not someone does or doesn't do something that we want or say, we're giving our power away. And then with the internal locus of control, the wisdom to know the difference, when we recognize that we do have control over certain things like whether we choose to exercise, what food we put in our body, how much sleep we're going to get, where and you talked about what we take in and what we take out, what we're going to watch, what we're going to read, what we're going to say to people, how we're going to say it, how we're going to treat ourselves and each other. Now we're kind of on the list of the things that we do and do not have control over. We're taking our power back because we're recognizing that, yeah, if we give our power away to things we have no control over, we are not taking advantage of the things that we do have control over. And those things are simply sometimes going outside when it's cold and rainy and going for that brisk walk through the park. That means making the better choice to eat food. And I also want to circle back to sugar a little bit. I told you before the story about my buddy who told me, look, man, no matter what, when you get up tomorrow, get out and get moving. And when I started exercising every day, it was a game changer. I mean, literal game changer, getting out and shaking off the funk by moving my body physically. But the other part about it was too is I was recognizing that I was like emotional eating late at night. I would be it was late at night before I'd go to bed and I'd be eating all kinds of garbage. And I wasn't heavy, but the next day I felt literally hungover. I felt like garbage. So again, if there's talk about output and talk about input, output being the things that you can maybe get a grasp on, getting out there and getting regular movement, regular sunshine, regular fresh air in nature. But the input being if you can recognize that the things that you're eating are toxic and sugar being maybe number one, if we can just control those two things, maybe moving a little bit more and having a little more exercise and cutting down on sugar as one of the primary poisons that can really affect our mental and emotional health and well-being, right there we've already taken back control and we've already made two steps in the right direction. And you're hearing it from two guys, you're making the decision yourself, and you're becoming connected to a community of people that care about, like, the way I look at it is, if I suffered in the past, and if you suffered in the past, and we can have a conversation and share our experiences and help somebody else that's in the exact same rut, that's stuck in the same position we were in, we have a duty and a responsibility not only to serve the public as Navy SEAL and a New York City firefighter, but we have the obligation to help other people that are also suffering. So what else could you tell somebody out there that maybe there's a veteran or first responder out there, they're isolating, they're overweight, they're not exercising, they're eating crappy. What else could you tell them that can maybe help them to understand where they're at, why they're there, and maybe they're not ready to go out there and run a marathon. Maybe they're not ready to go out there and start eating salads, for the next meal. But what are the other things you can encourage them to do to just help them be a little bit more healthy and get back on that
I
track?
would say they have to have a goal, right? It's hard to hit the target if you have no target, so they have to start a goal, create a goal, make sure it's a smart goal, or they want to ensure that it's a smart goal, which is specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time orientated, right? So as opposed to saying, "I'd like to lose weight," which is completely ambiguous, you would say something to the effect of, "I would like to lose 10 pounds over the course of the next 2 months. And I'm going to do that by walking 3 days a week. And I'm not going to eat after 9 p.m. And I'm going to try and replace French fries with a salad," whatever it is, right? You're super specific, it's measurable, it's attainable, it's realistic, it's time orientated. If it wasn't realistic, you'd say something like, let's say I'm 250 pounds and my body fat is 35%. I'd like to lose 50 pounds of body fat in the next 15 days. And I plan to do that by running a marathon every day. And I'm only going to eat salads and chicken breasts. It's like, yeah, you're not gonna go through with any of that. You're going from you're going from a baseline and you're trying to go to like an Olympic level right off the bat. It's not gonna work. So bite-sized chunks, smaller goals. If you have no discipline or you feel like your discipline is destroyed, and you feel like you've been doing the wrong things forever and you're just starting out, then start a small goal, right? Start a small goal. I'd like to lose a pound. I'd like to be able to do 10 push-ups. I'd like to be able to do one pull-up. I'd like to be able to run a quarter mile. Whatever it is, start small, and that's how you build, right? So if you're in a deep dark place and you don't have any of these disciplines that we're talking about, and you eat junk food all the time, and your sleep hygiene is terrible, first of all, you're not alone. And second of all, you can fix it. And newsflash, only you can fix it. So that's what you do is you start a goal, you make a goal, make sure it's smart, and then you start taking action steps towards that goal.
If you're a veteran or first responder, you've been highly trained to help people that are facing their worst nightmare. But you probably haven't been trained on how to deal with the damaging effects that chronic stress can have on our minds and our bodies, and how it can spill over into the rest of our lives. My name is Eddie. I'm a former New York City firefighter, and now I work with an organization called Guardian Revival. And we help veterans and first responders to become healthier mentally, emotionally, and physically by staying connected to a community to remind you that we appreciate and we're grateful for your service and sacrifice. If you want to learn more about how to stay connected to a community and how to improve your physical, emotional, spiritual, psychological well-being, listen to our podcast. You can find out more by visiting guardianrevival.org, or you can email us at agpodcast@guardianrevival.org. And remember, you are never alone. Monty, you talked about like physical well-being. You talked about like what we eat. Can you also talk about what it means to maybe find enjoyable things? Maybe it's not about like eating the salad and doing the push-ups, but can you talk a little bit about some of the other programs like Guardian Summit, Guardian Encore, Boots and Paws, some of the things that are not necessarily directly related to like going to the gym or eating or like meditation, like specific mental health things. But can you talk about the other things that make a more full life that can just help us to remind us that we can just enjoy life sometimes?
Yeah, so you said a bunch of things there that I'd like to kind of unpack. I think we need to find a mission and a passion, right? So we need to find something that gets us going, something that we're passionate about. And Guardian Revival happens to offer some of those things, like another summit that's getting out with other people and physically climbing mountains. They have a canine program. I was actually awarded my dog from the Boots and Paws program from Guardian Revival, and canines are amazing. And I personally loved animals before I did people, like early on in life. So animals can be a great conduit to other people, and basically teach you emotional regulation and all the things. So back to mission and passion, or what I think a lot of people lack when they leave the military or they leave first responders is a mission. And maybe they had a passion, but they can't do it as well as they used to anymore. What I would say to you there is maybe teach others, right? So if you were a star football player and now you have jacked up knees, or you were, excellent at golf and now your hips are messed up, or whatever it is, we all age and get hurt and can't do things as well as we used to. You can dwell on that and you can drive yourself crazy with that and be really miserable with that, or you can realize that we're not getting younger and things do break and wear down over time, kind of like parts and car parts. Our joints are like that, for example. But you can teach it to others. So, and that's where you find that find that mission and that passion. So, maybe kids, maybe veterans, but take a look at the things that you used to be passionate about. And if you can't perform at the level that you used to, maybe you can get the same joy and maybe even a new, more fulfilling joy by teaching that skill to somebody else. Kids are a good place to start, Special Olympics, veterans, first responders, you name it. But that's what I would say is don't dwell on what you can't do, and don't dwell on, the body parts that don't work as well as they used to. Do dwell on what you can do, what you're able to still do. And if you can't do it as well as you used to, teach it.
I love it. It's really driving that point home about shifting that focus away from focusing on the things outside of us that we have no control over, but instead taking that control back and saying, no, 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 what can I do? And I love that I mean, throughout this whole conversation, not only did we talk about, physical well being, about how exercise and diet can affect how we feel emotionally and psychologically, but then we also talked about how our mental well being and the habits that we participate in every day have a profound effect on that. But also, this idea of getting out of our own heads and getting out of being stuck in this victim mentality by recognizing, first of all, you're not alone with it and you're not the only one suffering out there. And if we want to really find a way to transcend our suffering, one of the best things we can do is to serve others. And you mentioned a few different ways, and for me to be part of this Guardian Revival community has been a way for me to reinvent myself, to reestablish a sense of purpose and meaning, and to find a life purpose that again allows us to have conversations to remind brothers and sisters out there that they're not alone with their suffering. And I love the whole idea that it's not about doing one thing. It's about finding a balance in life where we can manage what it means to be healthy, not only physically, but emotionally, mentally, psychologically, spiritually, and how our part and participation in community is such a big part of it. Recognizing not only are we not alone with it and connecting with other people to learn more about it, but then also reestablishing a sense of purpose by helping those that are also struggling. And this is part of who we are as human beings. And if you're curious to learn more about how you can get involved, check out guardianrevival.org. Or, like I said, you can email Monty and I. You can send us an email to the email address agpodcast@guardianrevival.org. And if you send us a message, we're going to bring it up in the topics. So if there's a burning issue you have, let's say you're a veteran or first responder and you notice that after your time of service or after a specific incident or when you got back from a tour of duty that you felt a certain way, or you notice some of the brothers and sisters that you served with were going through certain things, if you notice pain points that were sticky for you, if you notice points where you were stuck and you wish someone else had come in and told you, hey man, you're not alone. Hey, why don't you try this out? Why don't you try different ways of figuring out ways that you can improve your health and well-being? Well, that's exactly what we're doing this for. And we're so glad that you joined us in this conversation. We're going to be continuing to drop in and have these conversations. And Monty, anything else? If there's let's say there's somebody out there right now, they're listening. They're just tuning in. They know this is a podcast for guardians or veterans and first responders who sacrifice themselves for others. They're stuck a little bit. They're going through a tough time. They had a tough call at work. They're not sure how to deal with it. They're thinking about leaving service. They're thinking about maybe self-harm. They're thinking about whether it's all worth it. They're really in a tough spot. They're isolating. They notice they are having addictive patterns and their mental, emotional, psychological health and well-being has really been suffering. What would you say directly to somebody out there that's going through a tough time?
Yeah, well, I'd first say you're not alone, and what you're experiencing, others have experienced, and they will experience in the future. So you're not alone, and it's perfectly normal. But I would say this. I would say if you find yourself constantly thinking about the past, whether it's things that you did wrong or situations you wish you would have done differently or how somebody wronged you or whatever, if you're constantly in the past or your mind is in the past, you're creating misery. Okay, you're creating misery in the past. If you're constantly thinking about the future and worrying about the future, you're creating anxiety. Okay, and normally some people cycle between being miserable because of the past and creating anxiety of the future. So what I would say to you is try to be present. What does that mean? That means that you're literally present in the moment. So if you're outside, you're literally looking at the sky and the sun and the grass, and you can hear the birds, and you're in the moment. You are present. And a lot of dudes, a lot of guys, I'll speak for myself, action type guys and gals as well, we're always very present in the moment when we're doing anything, right? Shooting, jumping out of airplanes, putting out fires, walking up a ladder, whatever it is. Um, but we often, when we're not doing something, our mind is busy. We all have busy minds, and our mind goes somewhere, and it can go to the past and create that misery, or it can go to the future and create that anxiety. So what I would say to you is, this person, Eddie, that you just outlined, is try to bring your mind back. Okay. So when it goes back into the past and it starts to create this misery due to shame or guilt or whatever, stop it, take an action step in the right direction. Okay. If you find yourself worrying about the future and you're starting to create anxiety due to this, acknowledge it, bring it back to the present, and try to stay in the present and take an action step in the right direction. Does that make sense?
And not only does it make sense, but it's such a healthy reminder. I'd love to even practice it right now. So before we were dealing with the frustrations of this technology not working out, and I'm taking a flight on a trip on a filmmaking expedition, and you're also heading out for work as well. And I noticed that my mind gets kind of caught up ruminating, and there's lots of stories that I tell myself, not only about the past of certain things, but about anticipating the fears of the future and creating anxiety. And I noticed that when I do that, one of the things that I can do is, like we talked about before, I can't control other people. I can't control external variables. I can't control the weather. I can't control what's going to happen. But what I can control is I can practice awareness around my mind and my thoughts. I can actually become aware that I am replaying this story and this loop of the past or anticipating the future over and over. And if you're a first responder out there and you're in a hypervigilant state all the time, you're anticipating the next IED going off, you're anticipating the alarm going off at the fire station, you're anticipating the next call to show up for shots fired. If you're in this state of hypervigilance, in this state of fight or flight, our bodies physiologically can get stuck there. And one of the things we can do is tap into the power of the breath. And if we can just practice awareness around the fact that our mind is thinking, I can think to myself, oh, right now I'm feeling a little anxious because I'm anticipating whether I'm going to get to my flight on time, and it's rainy and windy in New York, and there's going to be turbulence, and what else am I going to forget? When I recognize that my mind is ruminating like that and I'm suffering from replaying these stories that I'm playing over and over, what I can do is I can take a deep breath into the belly, make my diaphragm pull air in very deeply, and simply settling in and becoming aware of all the thinking and taking a few long, slow, deep breaths can just connect me to my body. And just the awareness of the thinking can sometimes just chill me out, take it down a little bit, take me out of that state of fight or flight, take me out of that state of anxiety, and just allow me to become present just for a few seconds. And that doesn't mean my problems disappear. It doesn't mean that I don't have to get in a flight and it's going to be windy later. It just means I don't need to increase the anxiety and stress I'm feeling about it by thinking about it over and over. And so, breath work, meditation, these conversations, reminding each other of how our minds work as first responders and veterans, how we can get stuck in these states of hypervigilance, and figuring out ways to guide each other so that we can live healthier lives. That's why we're doing the American Guardian podcast. That's why Guardian Revival was created. So if you want to learn more, visit guardianrevival.org. Or like I said before, you can send Monty and I a question here at the American Guardian podcast to the email address agpodcast@guardianrevival.org. And we're going to talk about all things related to the health and wellness of Guardians. So I hope you join us in the next episode. And we're so glad that you've decided to spend your time with us. Please share this, like, subscribe. Check us out on YouTube, Instagram, guardianrevival.org, Spotify, Apple Music, all the places you get your podcasts. Share this with other veterans. If you know a brother or sister out there, a veteran or first responder that's going through a tough time, or you just love them and want to give them a tool that they can use if they're going through challenging times, please send this link to them, share this podcast. Monty and I are going to continue to drop in and remind you guys that you are never alone. So we'll catch you guys next time on the American Guardian podcast, presented by Guardian Revival.